Hello everyone, welcome back. When you make sourdough, make sure your starter is very well fed. And you're going to add 100 grams of starter to 350 grams of filtered water. And I like to put the water and starter together first so I can kind of like slosh it around, soften up the starter, get it ready for the flour that's to be added in. So just kind of like loosen it up, start getting the water incorporated into the starter, thin it down a little bit. And from here, I'm going to add 500 grams of bread flour. Now, you can play around with your flour. You can do like 400 grams of bread flour and 100 grams of wheat flour. Whatever you feel you want to do works great for this recipe. I'm also going to add 10 grams of sea salt. And I'm going to start whisking this all together. You can use your hands, you can use your fancy little bread stirring tool, whatever, whatever you guys like to do. You don't have to have a fancy little tool just because I have one. So we're just going to incorporate this enough to add the flour and the water together. And then I do an autolyse. So I'm going to cover this and let it autolyse for 45 minutes. Autolyse just helps to hydrate the dough. And after the 45 minutes mark, I'm just going to get in there and kind of give it a light, like I'm kind of like just squeezing, kneading. This is just making sure everything's incorporated. The dough is still sticky at this point. So I'm not really doing much of anything, but just kind of like making sure everything's really well blended at this point. And then eventually we're going to start our stretch and folds. So if you're familiar at all with making sourdough already, you know what stretch and folds are. Most of us, I think, have been there. Stretch and folds, generally for sourdough bread, we don't do a full-on knead because we want to build up air bubbles and get a light bubbly dough. And if you're kneading, you kind of kill off all of those air bubbles. So here I am starting to do some stretches. You just lift the dough, you let it stretch, and then you kind of like fold it back over the bulk of the dough. Grab again, give it a stretch, fold over the top of the dough. And I usually do a few sets of stretch and folds for my sourdough. I tend to go back in and do this 4 more times. So I do a whole series of 5 stretch and folds. So this is 45 minutes later, and I'm going to do another set of just stretch and folds. No blending, no kneading, just stretch, fold, stretch, fold. And by this point, you should see the dough coming together a little bit more. If your hands are sticking to your dough really good, simply put your hand in some warm water and do this with a wet hand, and it doesn't stick quite so bad. I'm doing the third stretch and fold, and from here I'm not going to keep showing the stretch and folds, but you can see where the dough is now really starting to change. It's stretchier, it's starting to act more like a well-formed bread dough. So after this, I'm going to do 2 more stretch and folds. So every 45 minutes, come in, do a stretch and fold, cover. 45 minutes, stretch and fold, cover. By the time you do your last set of stretch and folds, you will have a pretty nice looking dough that makes a nice little ball, pretty much all on its own. This is about what you should be looking at after your 5th set. So now I'm just going to do my bulk ferment, and I'm going to cover it up. Usually for my house, I do a bulk ferment for about 5 to 6 more hours. My entire bulk ferment from the beginning of autolyse to having my dough ready is about 8 to 9 hours. Go ahead and grate about 2 to 3 ounces of cheddar cheese. Really, you can't have too much cheese, make as much as you like. I find like 2.5 ounces to be just great. And now I'm also going to chop up 2 to 3 whole jalapenos. If you want them really hot, leave the seeds and the insides intact. If you want to make it a little bit more mild with less heat, remove the seeds and the ribs inside the pepper. Or leave a little bit in if you want a little bit of a kick, but not too much. I'm using frozen jalapenos here that I just took out of my freezer from my garden last year. At the end of your bulk ferment, your dough should be fluffy, not so sticky. And you can go ahead and get your banneton basket ready. I coat it with rice flour. Nice and, not too thick where it's like really dusty, but just coat it nicely with rice flour. And now I'm going to stretch out my dough, kind of form like a flat rectangular shape. And I will start adding in my cheese and my chopped jalapenos. And you can really do this however you want. If you want to like blend it all in and stir it together, it really doesn't matter how you want to do this part. So I just do a layer and then I fold the dough over itself, kind of make like another little ball. And then I flatten it back out again into another rectangle. And I just repeat that last step and add my cheese, add my jalapenos. For me, this makes it a little bit neater. I don't have my jalapenos falling out of my dough as I shape it. Um, if you like it to be a little bit more all through your dough and like be messy and be like scrumptiously delicious and just chock full, do this any way you like. I don't think there's really any right or wrong to how you incorporate the cheese and the jalapenos. So this is how I do it. I just kind of make a nice little envelope and then I roll my dough up and I'm going to start just pulling it towards myself. And now I want to make a ball and I'm shaping my bread loaf at this point. Pull it to me, shape, pull it to me, shape. And this helps to increase the tension, the surface tension of my dough. So I have a nice round loaf of bread. And this is what we're looking at the end. So because everything is like encased like an envelope for me, you don't see a lot of the cheddar and the jalapeno on the outside of the dough. Go ahead and put it in your banneton basket and we're going to cold proof this. So I cover mine with a tea towel and secure it with a rubber band. I put another folded tea towel over the top and I put it in the refrigerator overnight and bake in the morning. So I'm going to set my oven for 500 degrees, heat my Dutch oven for about 45 minutes. And at the end of heating, remove my dough from my banneton basket right onto some parchment paper. You can score your bread however you like. For my bread with inclusions, I just do a simple X on the top. When the Dutch oven is nice and hot, I add the loaf with the parchment paper inside, cover it up, and I'm going to bake this at 500 degrees with the lid on for about 25 minutes. 25 minutes later, I'll remove the lid and lower my temperature on my oven to 450 and bake for another 15 to 20 minutes. And here is our beautiful jalapeno cheddar sourdough bread. Once it's cool, I can start slicing it. Usually we don't wait till it's completely cool because it's too delicious to leave on the counter for long. My husband usually starts begging for this bread. He loves the cheddar jalapeno, so it's so good. So go ahead and slice your bread when you're ready. Be as impatient as you like because it's delicious either way. And enjoy. One of the things I love about sourdough bread is that it's so crusty. It's a great dipping bread for soups and sauces, and oh, it's just so delicious. So here is the inside. And we enjoyed this. I think we ate half of this straight away. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.
Thistle and Rose Farm.